And just like that, we're into a very special episode of Turn a Page here with nerdinitiative.com over on the Nerd Initiative YouTube channel. I am Chris. If we have not met before, I'm the Long Box Punk. I have a whole podcast focused on indie comics and the DIY punk rock mindset of making comics. And I am joined, I'm just completely over the moon that I am joined right now with Matt Kindt and Margie KRAFT Kindt. And we are going to be diving into the world that they've created in Gilt Frame. The first 2 issues have already been released through Dark Horse and Flex House Publishing. The 3rd issue is coming soon. We're not going to give away any spoilers, though. I just want to welcome both of you and thank you both for making time to hang out and talk with me here today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. It's our pleasure.
So let's jump right in, shall we?
Do it.
So Matt, I know that you have a huge, vast library of books that you've created. I'm curious if the world that you've created with Gilt Frame, is that an idea that you had, or is that something that once you decided you wanted to make a book with your mom, that the 2 of you started from ground zero together? How did this come to be?
Yeah, no, it's not an idea I had, and I hadn't even had the idea of us collaborating on a book together. You know, I've just been plugging away and working on books as they come up, and like my process is usually like have an idea and I'm excited about it, but I have the idea while I'm working on something else, so I don't have time to get to it. So by the time I'm done with the thing, if I still like that idea, then I pick it up next. But with this one, it just came about from conversation we had, and where I had been watching with my wife. We were watching Only Murders in the Building, and we're watching, and it was funny, and we enjoyed it. And but it reminded us of the building, this co-op building that my mom and dad live in, close to us. And I was like, you guys will love this. It's like a murder mystery, and it's funny, and it's in a building like the building you're in, and so they start watching it, and then we go over every Wednesday for dinner. My mom makes dinner for us, and she doesn't have to. I always say you don't have to. I'll bring.
I know, and I don't have to send the leftovers home
Yeah,
either.
you never.
I don't have to make lasagna every week either. But it's my pleasure.
We don't expect it, but it's
I know you don't.
And, I'm just gonna. Now it's in public, so you know. But she started watching it, and then halfway through the season, we go over there to talk about. We're talking about true crime stuff, and then we're talking about the show. And my mom was like, "She's like, I figured out the twist ending. I know who did the murder season 1." And the idea she had was so good. It was such a great twist that I was like, Mom, I really don't think the show's that smart to do that. It's kind of subversive, you know. And I was like, I don't think it's going to do that. And really, that was the idea of like collaborating. All the idea for a story came up right then. You know, I was like, well, here's the thing: if they don't do that twist, let's come up with our own story, and we'll use that twist. It's too good not to use. And so we waited out the season, and they didn't. Of course, they went somewhere else altogether.
Yeah.
And then we started work, but we waited. You know, we didn't want to repeat something that had been done. You know. And then we just started plugging away working on it. But yeah, to me, and Mom, you write too, but I feel like as a writer, you're always looking for ideas. So you're always whatever, your radar is always up. You know, you hear a story on the news, or you read something in the paper, or you even reading books, or even like Murders in the Building, you see something and you think, oh, it's going to go this way, and then it doesn't. You're like, oh, well, this other path that they didn't go, that's a whole other story over there.
Yeah.
So as a writer, you're always trying to do that, or keep your mind open. And so when we were talking about that, my mind's already open, and I thought that's a good. Let's do that.
Now, Margie, did you have any inkling of an idea that the twist that you thought this TV show was going to have was going to end up having you create a comic book with Matt, and then, you know, have it be as insanely good as it has been so far?
Well, I had no idea. Like Matt said, it was over dinner, and we're always batting about who's watching the most gross uh, uh, murder show or trial, and so it's just what we love to do. And so when Matt brought up the idea, he said, oh, I like the way I ended it. And the first season didn't end that way. The second season didn't. And so we decided to go with this. And when Matt said, let's do a mystery together, I said, well, Matt, I already have 3 on the shelf. Well, like he said, I write to publish 2, although I'm not the success he is. But the story ended up, so well, we pulled them off the shelf and took a look at the 3 of them and chose one. But of course, it ended up totally different than the one that I had written on the shelf. I think maybe one character stayed alive in the book, but Matt added interesting characters, and we worked together. Then on the plot, we had like a partner table in the kitchen where he sat on one side and I sat on the other. And we just started really each, I think, taking on the persona of the 2 main characters, and had so much fun. We would start laughing when we were writing it back and forth, and we would have to stop and say, hey, are you getting this down, or are you writing this? And so it was just, I had no idea that we would ever do anything like this. And I never felt, I feel like it's just quite an honor, and I feel like I'm starting at the top. And so it's been great.
That's awesome. I love that idea and that image of the 2 of you just going back and forth. And then, like, wait a second, someone has to capture that.
Yeah, somebody write this down.
Who's writing it down? You're writing it. No, I'm.
That's great. So, do either of you do like antique collecting? Like, how did you get to gilt frames and these like very fancy French chairs that I can't even begin to pronounce?
Oh yeah, I think it's fauteuil.
Yeah, me neither.
Well, I bought my first antique when I was in college, and I earned my first $10. I bought a Russian bread plate, and I don't know why. I think it's the art piece of it and the history, the story behind the piece that attracts me to antiques. And so actually, the chairs came kind of late in the story. When we started writing the story, I didn't have the chairs, but I won them at a Selkirk auction house here in St. Louis. And I thought, and Matt, you wanted a Paris connection, right? You thought, oh, we wanted to, travel around. We didn't want to stay in St. Louis all the time. And the chairs were made in France. And that gave us a connection, so we both the chairs in then. So, am I answering your question? I guess I'm the antique collector, and I make Matt look at them. But it's a story behind the piece. I want to know how how it got its scars and where it's been and who had it first and why was it ever made and who made it. That it's the story behind a piece.
Yeah. No, I think my mom increased my vocabulary when we were working on this. With the. And I still can't say that word. I'm always like, when we're going over the script and everything, I don't say it out loud. Even I was like whatever that word is. And then to me, it's what epitomizes our that writing relationship was like in the book. They're both on the plane, or they're both learning French off the app or whatever, and which in real life, Mom, you're like at the top of what's the app called that you use?
Oh, I in fact, the reason I was a couple minutes late tonight was because I'm in a French tournament on Duolingo.
Yeah. So
didn't want to lose my place.
He's really good at that. And then I thought it would be funny in the book on the plane. He like the character is basically my character that I was running, and I was like, oh, of course he would just have like a bootleg Duolingo app that's not quite right, So anyway, that's I felt like that was on character for both of us.
Great. Yeah, because even as she's showing off that she knows French and
no.
That first book, I love it.
That's why I'm still taking classes at this point, because I don't have a good ear for a foreign language, but I think it's fun.
That's great.
You know what I found over the years too? I'll just say this real quick: is I would go to I end up going to France like every other year for a convention or something, you know, and so every other year I'm like, oh, I'm gonna learn French this time. I'm gonna do it. So I sign up, but I have to sign up for the beginner class every time, you know, because I forgot, you know, I haven't practiced or learned. But what I noticed that every other year in the beginner class, I'm now the best person in the class. So I'm just gonna stay in the beginner class because you're at the top.
There it is. Yeah. That's just good planning on your part, really.
I know, right? I'm like, everyone's so impressed, you know. I can count to 10 right out the gate.
I feel like I always did Spanish in high school and then into college, and I would be the same thing now. I tried the Duolingo, I couldn't keep up with it, and instead of figuring out how to say like where's the bathroom, it was like, could I have the check, please? I'm like, I don't need that right now. So with this book being your first book together, and like you're also doing all of these podcasts together, which I love, and I love seeing some of the pictures from San Diego of you two doing that convention together. I want to talk about like your experience as both a brand new person, Margie, at like working on the convention, and then also like sharing that with your son, and then vice versa.
Well, I knew that I would be probably the oldest person there, but I didn't care because I knew nobody would be having more fun than I would be having for about 25, 30 years. Matt, I've been watching television clips of the Comic-Con in San Diego because I knew Matt was there, and just enjoying it vicariously because I knew what he was experiencing then. But now after going myself, just couldn't believe how much fun it was to have at this point a first. You know, we look very hard. The older you get, the harder it is to find things that are exciting that you haven't already done, and you look for firsts in life. Well, this was a first, and I had a great time. And I'm thinking, okay, I didn't know what I was missing before when I watched Matt there. Now I probably never get to go again, and now I'll know what I'm missing.
That's not true. I told you can go. I don't need to go for you to go.
Well, if you're not there, there's no point me being there. But in any case, it was just a wonderful experience, and it was really great to see. It was really great to be alongside Matt this time and experience his experience along with him, and see how he fits into that venue. It was just total delight.
That's cool. That's so good. And Matt, what was it like sharing like what normally is just a work thing for you? What was that like, sharing it and then seeing it through your mom's eyes?
Yeah, it was neat. And I'm gonna rewind back to like 1980. It was probably 1980, 87, 86, 88, somewhere in there. This small little convention in Kansas City. We lived like an hour outside Kansas City, and they would have this little comic book show that was in a strip mall, but in the basement under the strip mall. And it was just a small, like old school comic show, people smoking over the comics and everything. And then it was always on Mother's Day. And so I remember like, I was like, oh, please can we go? And then my mom was always like, sure, let's, we can go. And that was a formative experience. So I still remember that so vividly. And then I do remember the one time Sergio Aragones was like their guest of honor, and he wasn't even you go down the steps, and he's like right at the bottom of the steps before you go into the basement area, So he was like outside such a weird setup.
Yeah.
But I just remember all of that had such a big impression on me. And so honestly, this year, that was whatever, mid 80s. And then my first year at Comic-Con was 2000. And I was trying to get published, and so I've been going ever since. So 24 years.
Yeah.
At that show, which you kind of just get used to everything that it is.
Yeah.
And so it was awesome having my mom there, because it really makes you step back outside your body and look at where you are and how you got there, and then also like how great it is, and it helps you sort of appreciate it. Again, because you do kind of get used to some stuff, or how good it is. You kind of get used to it, so it helped me appreciate it again. And and it's every once in a while you sit any con you sit at and you see the amount of people in the costumes going by, and you're like, I can't believe I'm used to this, you know. What have I become accustomed to?
Yep. Yeah, we here at the local expo, there's some of the regular cosplay folks that come every year, and you know, every year their costume gets a little more elaborate, but it's like, oh, there's the Galactus again, and you know, just walks by on the raised boots and everything. And you're absolutely right though, like it just becomes very second nature being, and I can't imagine working 24 years worth of conventions and just all of the things that you get used to seeing at those. So I love that you guys had that and got to share that, and then
Thank
even
you.
that you got Margie's, you know, perspective on that too. It like seeing those pictures made me think like, man, what would I be able to do with my mom that would, you know, give me some of that shared experience that of something that I'm just like, yeah, this is what this is, Mom. And she would just be like, oh my gosh. And I haven't figured it out yet, but when I do,
Well,
Yeah.
keep working on it. I guarantee you, I'm having one of the best years of my life. So I would say keep working on that. There is something there for you and your mother, and you'll find it.
that's awesome.
Yeah, and you're younger than us, so like I just stumbled into, you know what I mean? No, we didn't stumble into it because you everything you do leads to something,
Yeah.
you know, good or bad. You sort of set up, you've built your road before you walk it.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, it took us a while to get here, but we've whatever. Eventually, just things fall into place. It'll happen.
That's great. I love that a lot. It'll happen. I'm gonna mark that. So, so one of the things that I definitely was going to ask about was, given your, like, speaking of the path and the road that you walk with a lot of your previous series and books, it's very heavily detail oriented, and it's never anything that just a casual reader would, I think, assume where the story is going. You always manage to find some sort of twist or surprise or something unexpected to bring in. As you were writing Guilt Frame, I know you said that the twist that you have planned didn't even come from you, it came from Margie. Has the rest of the writing process been something very different for you, or has it been, you know, like utilizing your experience on these previous series like Mind Management, Department H, and then bringing that into Guilt Frame and just kind of meeting your mom's ideas where they are and then adding all of these tiny little details? Like how has the writing process and the creation been, from like what you've done solo to now doing it in tandem?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting. I think the older I get, um, the more I like. I think all of my previous work, there's always like the formalistic aspect to it that is complicated or is like it's almost like in some ways can be a barrier to entry because it's a lot, you know. And I felt like with the older I get, or every book I do, not just this one but the couple before it too, I've been trying to figure out how to streamline that in a way where it's accessible and that you read it and you're entertained by it, and um, the complications or the formal whatever experimentation is like more subtle, or it's in the background rather than like in your face, you know, like Mind Management was. And I think part of us just working together, we were just having more fun, you know. And I feel like I've figured out over the last, I think working on Berserker and now this book, I've figured out a way to have fun with collaboration where I've never really collaborated before on story. And so I think that's fun to kick it around and then come up with dialogue. And mom wrote all the dialogue for her character that she was running, and I wrote my dialogue, and then we bounce it back and forth. So I think there was a fun there, and I think the complications or the uh, really, I think the twist my mom had was what hooked me on, like, oh, we got to tell this story because I think it'll be interesting, and I don't think anybody's done it before. And while we ended up with that a version of that twist or that idea, I think we added there's an extra little punch at the end that I think I'm not going to spoil anything, but I think there's the one we started with, and then a little extra, just when you think it's like, oh man, and then there's like one more little kick in the ribs at the end. I think.
That's great. And then Margie, with his detailed, just like oriented writing, that comes from you, right? I mean, obviously, apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
I think so. Yes. It really was. It was great fun collaborating with Matt. Early on, we got things, I think, in order over one of our dinners. We tried not to talk about shop over dinner because the other parties there,
Yeah.
but of course we did. And at one point, Charlene, Matt's wife, leaned over to him and she nudged him and she says, "Now, Matty, don't push your mother around." And of course, I'm more than happy to follow his lead. You know, he's the pro at this, but it was kind of nice that she was protecting, making sure that that he didn't push, that he didn't, and he didn't push me around. But it was.
No, we both have strong ideas.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's really the strength, is that we both really have strong ideas, and then we mesh them, find a way to put it to.
No, I think we've been very good about asking each other for advice, but I told you this yesterday. I was like, well, I can't. I know I can never tell you what to do. But, that's okay, and I'm okay with it. I shouldn't be able to tell you what to do.
Well,
we just give each other advice.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't tell me either. I mean, you can't tell me.
No, that's not the way. That's not the way you want to do it. You don't want to tell somebody. You want to maybe make suggestions.
Yeah.
Are there specific scenes, Margie, that like artwork style, you have a very specific image in your head that you then like can relay to Matt of, hey, for this specific thing, I see this. Can you make that happen? Or has it just been like, here's the script, here's where we're going, Matt, make it work?
Oh, are you talking about how the script fit in with his artwork? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and like, are there, with him doing all of the artwork, is there, are there moments where you're like, I want this to look this certain way?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I definitely got notes. You go ahead. What the notes were.
Well, for one thing, I thought, and this, well, there are two things I'll say about that. Then Matt, then you can say, how you saw it. But I thought that his great Aunt Mary should have had nicer clothes. I thought, I thought, well, like Sam has an Aloha shirt, and his great Aunt Mary just has a plain old like white blouse on.
Yeah.
I'm thinking she should be fancier. And the response was usually, "Well, Mom, when the picture is shrunk down, it won't show anyhow." I'm thinking, okay. I thought, well, couldn't she have better shoes? Couldn't she have a handbag? She would never go there without a handbag. But we were all worked out. I would say that the major clash was really about an historic fact, because I generally don't write fiction. I generally write nonfiction.
Okay.
I think when you work a historic element into a work of fiction, there's a point where you can suspend reality, but then I think there's a point where you should be true to history. And I didn't like he had the character, the woman in black was a real character in 1904, a real thief who the best thief at the World's Fair for months and months. She got away with whatever she wanted to steal. And Matt drew her in what would be an evening gown of the era, not at all what a woman in 1904 would have worn out in public during the day, especially not to a public fair like that. And I liked what he drew, but it wasn't right. And so I suggested that he change it. And he said, well, I already drew it. And then maybe, man, I may not remember this really, but he'd already drawn
Sounds right. So
and he liked it. And I said, well, I like it too, but it's not right. And he said, well, show me what it should be. I said, well, I have about 2,000 or 3,000 images because I do a lecture series on the 1904 World's Fair.
Okay.
I collect these original images from the fair, the most photographed fair in history. So I said, well, I have about 2,000 or 3,000 examples. How many do you want? But I just sent one. And the next time I saw the drawing, it was changed to what was appropriate, historically correct for the era.
That's awesome.
I made her look like a comic book cat thief, and then
Yeah.
and then I think I remember saying, I was like, Mom, it's a comic book.
I
And you're
know.
like, Wait, what did you say?
Well,
like,
I said,
yeah,
but my friends, if I'm going to give this to my friends, the first thing they say to me is, you got that wrong. So I thought, well, we could just sidestep that.
You're like, you can keep it as is, or we could have it. It could be
right.
Yeah,
That's true. I think that my last sentence to him was, well, you can do it any way you want to. You can keep it that way, but it'll be wrong.
Yeah, those were the magic words.
Yeah.
Got it. Yep. Stay humble. Got it. I'm glad that you mentioned The Lady in Black, because one of the things that I love about this series is it feels like artistically you're playing with different things. You're like, The Lady in Black was done very differently art style wise than the rest of the book. And
that's why I didn't want to redraw it. All those tiny little lines, I was making it look like an etching, and it's so many lines more. There's 1,000 more lines on that page than there's anywhere else. Anyway, continue. Go ahead.
But I mean, like, even seeing that, it gives it a very unique and distinctive feel. And then, like, the diorama of the cover of the second issue is something very different. And then even I'm going to say his name wrong, the Inspector Vaillant.
Vaillant.
There, yeah,
I think so.
It's the swallowed
T. It translated, it means valiant. So you can say valiant if you want.
That is so much easier for me. But even, at the end of the second issue, when we've got the little figurine of the inspector, see how I did that? It just feels like you're playing with different styles. Is that intentional, or am I just like reading way more into this than what there is?
Yeah, no, I think this is the beauty of comics, right? It's a visual medium. So my whole life, I've always thought, if it's going to be a comic, then it should be something that can only be in this format, right? Otherwise, we'll just do prose. Like, why not just write a mystery? Or if you're going to do TV or movie, then do that. But let comics be as comic book as they can be, and figuring out ways to do that has been fun. And the story in those miniatures, Mom, maybe you can tell it better, but those we had laying around for forever. So
really,
you tell them where those came from.
Well, they've been around since your daughter, my granddaughter, was little, because I was fortunate enough to be able to babysit her at least once a week, and she loved the miniatures, not the dollhouse, but she liked making scenes, adventurous scenes. Okay. Now, she never did a murder mystery. We never did a corpse or anything like that. But we did have all the elements, like the knife in the kitchen drawer. That we had all the elements for it. But really, it started, Matt, when you were going to, I think New York, to a convention. Because you've been doing this so many years, you want to be interested and excited yourself. And so you said, I want to do a peep show, for something. And I said, well, I think I can help you out with that. And by a peep show, he meant like a scene in a box that people would look in.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I think I can help you out with that. So I dug out his daughter's figures from about 15, 20 years ago now. And we just looked at everything. And I think pretty much, well, Matt, we did go to the miniature museum, and you bought a few extra pieces. I think you bought burning fire logs,
the fireplace,
and some lighting in that. But so that's I guess pretty much. And then you were really the one who said you were going to draw a cover for issue 2, and then you thought, and you were starting to, I think, draw the scene, and you thought, well, why not just use the scene?
Yeah, that's what. Well, it started. I went to Heroes con in Charlotte. We go there every year, and as I've done so many cons, I'm always trying to think of like how to make it more interesting for me, because if it's interesting for me, then everyone else will be having fun too.
Yeah.
So that I only did it that one time, but I wanted to do a peep show where you just you pay. I made sure people paid too. I was like, I don't want it to be a thing where you need to pay $2, to lift the thing and then look in there. And I had a big sign and everything, and it was so fun. And I made sure whatever it said, peep show, all ages, because kids, of course, were like, "What's in there?" And parents were like, "I was like, I don't." But yeah, you pay $2 and you lift the thing, and then it was basically the cover for issue 2, the murder scene. I had a version of that set up in there, and it was all lit, so you're looking down into the murder scene, and so it was just kind of something fun to do. But yeah, issue 2, I thought I was just going to draw that for the cover, and then I thought, oh no, what if I use the miniatures as photo reference, and I draw that, I take a photo and then draw off of the photo, and then when I was setting it up, I was like, well, why don't I just use the photo? Why am I drawing it? So in a way, it was like I was getting lazier and lazier and lazier.
Oh,
but
no.
I will say it was actually hard to light it. Like I set it up and I was like, oh, well, it looks terrible. So I had to light it from the back so the windows looked like light was coming in, and then the focus had to be just right. And it was a lot. It would have been faster to draw it in hindsight, but yeah, no, it was cool to use that stuff. And it kind of reminded me of when we were kids. I remember we told the story in an interview somewhere where I woke up. My mom was a teacher while I was growing up too. So in the summer, we all had the summers off, And I remember my mom making like a murder scene at home, with like footprints and drops of something, and then the cookies are turned over, and it wasn't. It was really like who stole the cookies kind of murder scene, And so just like a real life thing to sort of figure out, and then what I found out later is like, oh, my mom was always teaching us, even in the summer. We didn't have summers off. It felt like we did, but it was like she was always reading to us and setting up things and making us work. And then I didn't realize that until I saw her what she was doing with our daughter when she would come over, and there was like it seemed like fun and do whatever you want, but there was a structure underneath everything. So like, we're gonna do some of this, then some of this, and it was all it was the smartest teaching I've ever seen, because you don't realize you're being taught something. Anyway.
Well, Matt, do you remember these? Talking about the crime scenes?
Yeah. So these are from. So those are my dad. They were, spoiler, they were my dad's shoes, But the question was, why is the pattern worn like that on the sole? Can you figure it out? You might be able to.
No.
You're kind of putting it on the spot, man. It's kind of hard. These are leather soles from his shoes.
Okay.
And the reason that this one has the hole worn that way is because it was the foot that he used on the brake pedal.
Oh. Okay.
Then,
so it's the outline of the brake on the right foot.
Yeah. And then there's another pair somewhere where you could see that the toe was worn because that was the shoe that your dad used when he pivoted to get out of the car. So it's just stuff like that, really, that I think that the purpose was really to teach the boys to be good observers and to use deductive reasoning. That was really all the way. And I think that just using the fun examples like this made it seem like not work or not like education.
Yeah.
But a game, more of the game.
Yeah.
And now that you've shown me that, I'm going to look at my shoes, because
I know,
right? I end up wearing mine out like that too.
I don't know how many shoes have leather soles anymore. I'm not sure that that the new soles wear the same way as the leather did.
Yeah.
But look, I mean, there are mysteries everywhere.
Yep, I love that. I love, like, even having the perspective of thinking at that level all the time. like the rest of tonight after we're done with this, I'm just going to be looking at everything differently. Like, do I know everything about that? What about that over there? So you mentioned a couple things that I want to revisit. One of them being the convention setups that you do with the peep show and with the, I know one of them when Flux House was introduced, you did a big fancy display with that. And then, you know, the typewriter setup that you've done. Do you theme those based on your books all the time? Like, do you have a Gilt frame specific like convention setup that you're thinking about maybe bringing on tour with you next year?
Yeah, I did. I think I started doing more when Flux House, my imprint with Dark Horse, when they let me have that. And then I sort of wrote a mission statement for myself, which is like basically like to think about everything and consider everything. Really, my mission statement about comics in general, which is consider every part of the comic, like the front, the cover, the back cover, the inside covers, the footer, the space around the art, and I think that has always been my sort of philosophy with comics, and with Flux House. And I was launching it. I started to realize I am like if you go to conventions for 20 years in a row, it starts to become kind of the same,
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I don't want to be bored. I don't want to go to a con and then feel like I don't want to be there, or I'm just, I it's not that's not if I'm not having fun, they're not having fun,
Yeah.
and if you're having fun, then I'm having fun. So really, it was a matter of that is considering, don't be bored, but also considering every part of the convention experience. It's such an odd thing to sit there and then if you're just signing like a stack of books for someone, it's just it's weird. It's weird. So if it's already a little weird, or I was just trying to think of ways, how can you make that more interesting, or make it more fun, or more interactive, or less of a I'm here, you're there. And I think that first setup I did, I recreated part of my studio. I got like a whole end cap, and I brought my rugs from the studio and my drafting table, and then I sat there. I was like you're walking into my studio space, and then we can chat. And I can show you things, and then and I have little photo opportunities. You can stick your head and get your picture taken, and it was more of like an activity center. But what I liked was I didn't have a table between me and a person.
Mm.
It was inverted. So like you're walking into a space that I'm in, and now we're in it together and just hanging out, and I had a plant and the lamp. Uh, and I'd always wanted to do something like that to sort of melt away that I'm this person, and I have this, and then you're over there.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be something where it's just more of a natural experience. It was completely unnatural, but also it was in a way more comfortable. People had more fun, it was so much more interesting to me. And then, yeah, I just think that philosophy carries over to the books and the cover for issue 2 with the photo and then how we approach everything, the art and the storytelling and then the twist and then the extra twist, and it's all related.
That's great. And even the like hidden diamonds on the back cover, looking like the back of a frame with the paper peeled back. I mean, there's stuff everywhere. And like that attention to detail is really like why I fell in love with your work, because it's just, there's always like, I could read one book of yours 7 different times and see something different 7 different times.
Yeah.
And I think it's great. And like with Hairball, you've got the faux fur cover. Are you going to do like an actual Gilt frame on the cover of Gilt frame when it's collected?
I think it's just going to be foil. So it's not like a real frame or anything. But now I thought, but no, you have to be able to put it on a shelf. But that's a good idea.
Well, I'll trademark that now. So
Yeah.
you're welcome. But if you were solving a real life mystery as the two of you, how do you think you would do?
I would be terrible, Mom. You'd be all right.
Oh, no, we wouldn't give up. We would never give up. We would just keep at it like ferrets. We would keep at it. I
Yeah.
think,
I
yeah.
guess here's the thing. The reason I write is to live vicariously through and to do the thing I can't do, you know. So I like spies, but I'd be a terrible spy. I like detectives, but I would be an awful detective. But I don't know.
And so to follow up with that, with your excellent sleuthing skills, if the two of you could solve or work on any mystery, real or fictional, from any time period, what would that mystery be, and like why?
Boy, that's a good one.
Well, if you want to think, man, I'll just throw a couple
Yeah,
out.
you go.
One is one that I've been working on since I was young, actually, because my grandfather's brother disappeared. And there are a few clues, and different family members. I was very young, but different family members would tell me different stories about, well, he was seeing a married woman, and I heard where that the husband shot him, and I know where he's buried. You would get all these different things. So that's a real family mystery that I think could still be solved. Actually, I don't think any action could be taken. I mean, I wouldn't do that, of course. I mean, everybody's dead, who was a key factor, but it's still kind of, I think it could still be solved. I think the bones could still be found. But I think other than that, I think it wouldn't be bad to look in, and I have done this actually. I've gone to City Hall up into the attic and the records and looked, trying to find out more about the woman in black at the fair, because for her to have eluded for almost 3 months, everybody at the fair, I mean, there were guards in every palace, there were guards outside every palace, there were guards at every door, and they were looking for her. Now, I know that you couldn't frisk a woman in 1904 like maybe you could today. I understand the advantage a woman would have had, but I still wonder, how did she do it? There were guards at every exhibit over jewels and things like that. And people who were victims always gave the same description, just a woman in black, and they could, and so I guess that would be one, is how in the world did she elude everyone for so long when they were determined to find her?
Yeah.
She was good. Matt?
Yeah. Okay. Good. That gave me just enough time. Gave me just enough time that I can't choose between the two. So like my Jack the Ripper is one of them, but I have a feeling you would be disappointed with the real, you know what I mean? I think it's I honestly, like, the older I get too, the more I think, oh, it's probably the simplest, it's going to be Occam's razor thing. It's just but I don't think it's anything. I think it would be somebody just in some random one of the early serial killers. That's my sort of like gut feeling. Anyway, I would like to know that. And then I think modern would be like JonBenet Ramsey. I thought I knew, and as I get older and you hear more, I'm like, it's killing me I want to know. That's what I feel like. If you've read Mind Management, in Mind Management, there's these monks who record all of history, and they've seen everything, and there's a big library, and then the library there's books, and it's the what actually happened, the truth of everything, right? So you pick a year and a time and event, and you can actually read the thing that happened, and that to me was my comic book version of what I hope heaven's like, right? When you die. Like, one positive thing about dying to me is like, oh, maybe every secret will be revealed, right? I can go into this room and then know everything. And what I think is funny is, like, the ones you think, like Jack the Ripper or something, it's like, but what I think will happen is the one you think is solved, oh my, it was something else altogether, right? Like somebody got away with it and then no one knew it. And I think that would be interesting. Anyway.
Well, I think, Matt, I think Jack the Ripper has been solved. I read a book this year. I think that case has been solved. In my mind, it's solved. I'll have to pass on the book. I can't remember the title right now. But Chris, if any of your viewers want to know what book I'm referring to, we can be in touch again later.
Perfect.
But I believe that it has been solved. And I thought of JonBenet Ramsey too.
Yeah. Anyway, good question. I like that one.
Do
you have one? What's your answer to that? I want to know.
Oh, I don't know that I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because for me, like, it would be hard not to say something that Sherlock Holmes has done,
Mm.
because
Yeah.
I used to read a decent amount of Sherlock Holmes, like growing up. Not that I remember any of it now, but because my memory is just awful. But my mom always used to want me reading, instead of like the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew, she wanted me reading the classics. So I was reading like Edgar Allan Poe and Shakespeare and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle when I was, middle school, because I too had parents that were both educators. And so I just grew up around all of these classic pieces of literature. And then when I got into high school, my English teacher was like, all right, so we're going to read Lord of the Flies first. And I was like, oh, I just read that like last summer. He was like, what do you mean? I was like, yeah, I just read that for fun. And he was like, okay, all right. So I think it would probably, just to see how Sherlock Holmes worked, and like just to be in the room, not even to like be involved. I just want to be a fly in that room to see how he would actually like figure things out in that time period, without the internet, without computers, without all of the high tech that we have now. How did he still be like fiction's greatest detective? So I think that would probably be just somewhere in that in that realm.
Great one.
So with being Longbox Punk, I love talking comics, obviously, but then I also have to bring up music. I'm curious, on the flight from St. Louis to Paris, what were each of your characters listening to when they weren't learning French?
Oh, well, I think, Matt, why don't you start with that one?
Yeah, I'll
What
start.
would you?
Man, so I'm on Spotify. If you look at my if you listen to it long enough, I've been on there years. So every week they give you like a recommended, like, here's what we think you'll like,
Yep.
And every week it's like my musical taste is so all over the place that I feel like the list that it's giving me is like making fun of my music taste. Because I was like, oh, I get why. I was like, I get why you're putting that in there, but that's not at all what I. It's crazy, but I will I'll say in thematically with Longbox Punk, I'd say like of my new favorite bands, I like Amel and the Sniffers. I don't know if you know them.
Yep.
They're pretty great. I saw them live last year,
That's cool.
but I don't think that's airplane music. On the airplane, I'd rather have like something. Usually, there's like a 1960s jazz playlist that I'll listen to. That's just like the chillest thing,
Well, I
calm
would say,
down.
I would say, given the dream that Great Aunt Mary was having, I'd say she was probably listening to Offenbach's Can Can.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, that's
And
true.
I love just love that opera anyhow. And then you get to the Can Can, and oh man, they just just rip roaring. And but I think also I think Sam and Great Aunt Mary both liked the Flower Duet.
Yeah, that's from an opera, Lacme. So the backstory in that was we were in Paris. I don't know how many years ago, 10 years ago maybe, and we took our daughter and her best friend, and then it was a Bastille Day or something. They had a big thing with the Eiffel Tower and fireworks, and then it was just like the most magical thing
Yeah.
because we didn't know what was happening. And it's like, oh, it was like fireworks. What's going on? And there was a thing, and then they were playing this song, and I was like, what is this song? It was just like one of those random moments where you're like, you didn't plan to go to the thing or be in this spot, and then music's happening, and a thing is happening, and then it was just the greatest thing. And then I then hunted, thank God for the internet. Like before internet, you'd hear a song and be like, and then I was like, I have no idea, and you never hear it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now I'm like, okay, what was it? What would it have been? What would they have done? It was a song from that opera, which I don't know opera at all. But I was like,
Yeah,
I just like that song.
that part of the education didn't take.
Yeah. I was like, I'm definitely leaning more punk than I am opera.
Yeah.
Same.
But
What
I
was the
appreciate it.
opera called?
Lakme, right? Is that how you say it, Mom?
Lakme.
Yeah.
It's and it was just really the whole theme. I don't want to give away. I'm not sure what's in issue 1 and 2 as opposed to issue 3. I don't want to give away too much, but really, the Lakme is the flower duet really was the perfect music to fit into the mystery.
Yeah, it is cool. What's cool about opera is like almost somebody's always dying at the end. You know, I love that.
Yeah.
So
Very morbid of you.
Always works. It always works.
So I also having this book called Gilt Frame. Do either of you own gilt frames?
Well, let's just say one of us does collect them.
Well,
Guess which one?
one of us goes to estate sales frequently.
Okay.
And which means about every weekend when nothing else conflicts with that. And you see the most beautiful carvings. And I've always felt when you go to an art museum, you should not just look at the masterpiece in the frame, but you should look at the frame. And I've often wondered, looking at some of these frames, why isn't the carver recognized also? Well, I know that very often it's probably not known who the carver was, but why isn't it known? Why isn't their name carved on the back of the frame? Or maybe it is and just not recognized. I don't know. But I thought that the frames were sometimes more stunning even than the masterpiece, or just as stunning as the masterpiece inside it. And I would go to estate sales and I would see these beautiful hand-carved frames. I would call them one-offs. And nobody wanted them. And I do have a soft spot for orphans, which is, I guess, why Great Aunt Mary took in Sam. I'm not sure. She also takes in pieces that nobody else wants, like old chairs and old frames. And there's just such beauty in them. And they would maybe be $1 or $2. And then Matt, you did a lot of art, and so often the frames might be the right size for something. And so I just started bringing them home. And so I have a storage unit downstairs with quite a few.
That's great. I love that story. Thank you. So those are my official questions, but I have 2 more things that I want to do. The first is I want to take a screenshots to use as the YouTube thumbnail for the video when it goes live. And that's basically so that you as creators can have some fun posing instead of me finding what scene where we're all smiling and looking happy. So get my keyboard shortcut. All right, 3, 2. Yep. Yeah. Make sure the background is all set.
Oh, I don't know how to do that, Matt. Matt, tell me how to do that.
You just gotta lift your laptop up. Just look up, and I'll look down at you.
Oh, mine's keeping. Why are iPhones smart? I can't rotate my phone.
No, you gotta do the lock. Let me know when you're ready.
I'll just be the septuagenarian who isn't into the technology and doesn't know what's going on. I'll just be impressed with you two.
All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Great. See, that's the fun of doing that. And then the other thing I'd like to do is I love talking to creators and just hearing everybody's story, because knowing that as comic creators you have a love for comics, it's something that we can all share. I also know that all of us have different stories and different backgrounds and experiences. So I always love to end every episode I do by just opening the floor up to you. If there's anything that you want to tell people, it could be about Gilt Frame, it could be about comics, it could be about how turning your camera is the best way to take pictures of yourself on the internet. Either way, the content isn't what I'm after. It's really just making sure that both of you have a space to just be able to share anything that's on your hearts or minds. Take it away.
Matt, do you want me to start?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Okay. I grew up with little Lulu. I was in love with little Lulu, and I only got a dime, and so I could only get one comic, and it was always little Lulu. And my generation grew up with that. My generation did not grow up with graphic novels. I think the first one that my generation would have noticed would have been Mouse, which won the Pulitzer Prize. And I think my generation did read that. but then I think that might have been the last graphic novel that crossed our radar. So I would just encourage my generation not to miss out. Uh, um, Look at the graphic novels that are out there, and you'll find something that has a lot of appeal. And it's really a different experience to read a book that depends just as much on the art as on the script. And I would say that we liked comic books when we were little. There are also graphic novels out there that have great appeal. Don't miss out on that.
Yeah,
I love
no,
that.
I would say rather than recommending a book or it's here's my favorite thing to do is to give books to people. I think the older I get to, the less I think there's such a emphasis on collecting, and I do it myself. I have so many books, but as I get older, you realize I was like, oh, I have as much fun. I have actually more fun like sharing a book or giving a book away as I do having any books. So I think if I was going to say anything, it's like your favorite book. Give somebody a copy of it. If they're
Yeah.
not reading comics, try to figure out what they might like, and pick one. Like if you know comics, you know a lot of comics. So if you think about that person, you can sort of curate. I was like, they're gonna love this one, and then get them that book. I would just say that it's like let's keep people reading comics.
That's great. Well, I thank you both for that because I agree with both of you that graphic novels are incredible and giving comics away. I've actually had some really close friends because I'm doing this show that have reached out like, hey, I kind of want to give comics a try. Where do I start? And
Yeah.
so like that has been really enjoyable because then I'm, looking at my shelf and pulling out long boxes like, all right, I know I have an issue from this one series that will scratch that itch for that person. And it is a lot of fun to then be able to give it to them and then also like hear what they thought about it.
Yeah.
So I love that process too. And even I wish we had more of do you guys have here in the Midwest, we have like the little libraries that people will build and then put in like their front yards and neighborhoods. Do you guys have those?
We have those. Yeah. And Webster, they have them a lot, Mom.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, this is new to me. I have to get out to the suburbs more. I live in the city of St. Louis. I have to get out to the suburbs more often.
Well, make sure you bring a book that you want to give away with you because then when you see them, it's like a library and you just add something in and maybe take something out if you have a fancy for it. But I like leaving comic books in the ones that are near me because then every time I go back by, the comics are all gone. And I'm like, all right.
That's what people want most. They're the most exciting.
Yeah. So, well, thank you both so much for joining me, hanging out with me, and just sharing some of your experience with Gilt Frame. This has been an absolute treat for me. So I have had a blast. So hang tight after I hit the end button. I've got some logistics for you, but that's going to be it for this episode. My thanks again from nerdinitiative.com for coordinating all of this, and then for both Matt Kindt and Margie Kindt for joining me. Gilt Frame is out now. Is there a timetable on the collected volume?
I think February is when the hardcover is coming out.
Okay, so keep your antenna up for February when the collected volume, if you haven't missed, because I know my local shop is out of all of the issues of 1 and 2. So February for the collected, which is also good for me to know because I'm a trade waiter at this point. I'm out of long box room, but thank you both so much for joining me. Remember to subscribe to the nerdinitiative.com YouTube channel, follow, like, subscribe, do all the things. Sound off in the comments if you also collect antiques or if you happen to own any Gilt frames. And that's going to be it for this episode. What's a good podcast without a good tagline? This is mine. That's it for this one, punks. Now go do what's good for you and read some indie comics. We are out of here.